Hello, BookTube. All right, we're doing our 12.9K Q&A, and we're on part 2. And we are up to Candice Uri, who says, "Hey, howdy, Steve. Sorry to hear your summer remodeling has been such a hassle, but it's given me a chance to revisit your greatest hits of earlier stuff." Well, that was one of the only, when I had that horrible week where I couldn't film anything, that was my only consolation, is that you people have a gigantic ocean of videos to look at if you want to. Now that you've also started live streaming, have you watched any of Margaret Pinard's StreamYard tutorial videos to up your streaming game? I need to start Steve streams again. I have let them stop completely. They were obviously impossible during construction. The construction is largely over, so I need to start those again. And B, no, I have not watched any of Margaret Pinard's StreamYard tutorials because I don't want to up my streaming game. If my game isn't good enough, then you'll be the first to tell me, and I'll just stop. Tomorrow's Classics has a barrage of questions. This is 1,000 words to read. Number 1, what are your thoughts on Clive Barker? I'm reading Magic at the moment and loving it so far. I loved Magic. I thought it was fantastic. A lot of his short stories are very much designed to gross me out and creep my skin and keep me up at night and make me jump. And no fiction does that. I've mentioned many times before, horror fiction just doesn't do that for me. Its primary goal with its readers, it just doesn't do at all with me. A lot of Clive Barker, especially his earlier stuff, the Books of Blood and all, they want to do that. Magica wants to be a novel, and has only some scenes that are leaning in that direction. I thought it was tremendously good. Number 2, are there any dogs from amongst the strays you picked up back in your traveling days that you still remember to this day? Any good stories? This is a trick question. For those of you who are new to the channel, I've done a lot of traveling. I don't anymore. But I've done a lot. I used to do a lot of traveling, and it was always I traveled with my dogs, and it was always my habit whenever I could, once I landed somewhere, once I was in someplace, to pick up stray dogs from wherever I was, clean them, feed them, love them, let them sleep, on top of me in a bed, safe from the elements, safe from anything. For the while that I was there, for the time that I was there, they could live the life that all dogs should lead, with the understanding that I can't take you with me. This is all you get. I will turn you back into the world after this. But I won't see you skulking around for scraps on my watch. If I'm there, then you will live with me. But when it comes to your question, are there any of them that I still remember? I remember every one of them. Every single thing about every one of them. Every single smell, every single quirk, every single personality. I remember every single one of them. Of course I do. Of course I do. Let's just move on. Number 3, maybe not as fondly regarded as Star Trek, but do you like the original Lost in Space TV series? Not really, no. Number 4, this one's just a specific thank you for the videos on different translations of the Iliad. It really helps to see the different styles in the opening lines, and was a great help when I read it for the first time last year. I went with E.V. Ruse because the prose is easier, and I feel like I'm not missing much from the translator trying to wrangle the text into a rhyming scheme or rhythm, etc. Now I have a little collection of Iliads and Odysseys on my shelf. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Dr. Bacon has a blast of a gigantic paragraph of things. Number 1, something that comes up frequently on this channel is what you have referred to as the casual racism of the 21st century. I read an article recently that overlaps with that, wherein the writer, that's a sure sign. If you have written a comment that's long enough for you to include the word wherein, your comment is too long. Wherein the writer claimed that white people cannot experience racism due to the power dynamics in our society are built upon. Yes, it's all about that. It's all about power dynamics. The people, the blue check marks, the fascists who cite this, never pursue that to its logical end. Never. They never do. I think I'm missing something here and was hoping you might lend some insight. If this is true, what would we classify the Holocaust if not racist? Exactly. Yes. But also, it's ridiculous to say that it's power. These people are redefining terms in order to make themselves the hero of the story. And not even doing it consistently and not even doing it believably. The sheer number of people out there in the world, the sheer number, let's say, of white people out there in the world who are forced to take diversity sensitivity training at their place of employment, whether it's a school or a hospital or whatever, and are told point blank, if you refuse to take this course, we will fire you. If you don't pass the course, we will fire you. If you make the slightest comment against heterodoxy, against orthodoxy, racial or otherwise, we will fire you. If that's not a power dynamic, I don't know what is. So you're right. I can't help you to make any sense of it because it doesn't make any sense. Racism is when you discriminate against someone on the basis of inherent characteristics. In other words, you are not criticizing them for their choices, good or bad, just or unjust on your part to do the criticizing. You instead are discriminating against people for something over which they have no control. That is racism. If you say white people can't write, if you say all white people are racist, you are being racist. Anyway, question number 2. In a recent interview, a group of Gen Z kids said that they were being forced to read Beowulf and Shakespeare, both of which are out of date and now useless, that they should only be reading modern works. Do you think there is anything that can be done to preserve the classics as this generation eventually grows older and assumes control of the educational system? No. No, I don't. I don't think there's anything that can be done to do that. Unfortunately. I know every generation, especially when it reaches the age of 28, says that the very youngest generation that's just entered the threshold of adulthood is so much dumber than kids my day were. I know every generation says that, but very few of them can back it up with statistical proof. And that is absolutely the case now with Gen Z. That is absolutely the case. The rare exceptions are great. The rare exceptions are smarter than any equivalent age group has ever been in the history of humanity. But, oh my, they are, in the majority, much dumber. And even the rare exceptions have a much more pronounced taste for fascism. It's creepy to see, and the future well-balanced educational system has no hope whatsoever. None whatsoever. If you have people in tenure-track positions at universities going on Twitter and saying folk magic is science, and not getting any pushback from anyone who isn't immediately labeled a racist, then you're in big, big trouble. Then the future is in big, big trouble. Let's see here. Johnny has a gigantic paragraph. A gigantic paragraph. Hey, Steve, I am a huge fan living in Turkey. I'm preparing to start a master's degree on Turkish history. I've been reading constantly a variety of history books. Sometimes, to take a break, I read historical novels. So far, among the ones that I've read and loved, The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco and Samarkand by Amir Malouf. Can you recommend more historical fiction along those lines that would be worth reading? Sorry for the long message. I'll try to stick to keeping it brief rule next time. Just wanted to let you know you have people enjoying your channel here in Turkey as well. I have spent so much time in your country and loved the people that I met. Just loved them. How wonderful to know. And when you say people enjoying my channel, do you have friends who watch my channel in addition to you? Do I have a little pod of watchers in Turkey? That would be awesome. You must tell me. Well, first of all, recommendations, I'm going to need more than just 2 books to make a recommendation that will fit for you. I take my recommendations of books very seriously. So feel free to email me. But in addition to that, what the heck? You're not telling me where you are? Where are you? What's life like these days in Turkey? And is there a group of friends who watch me? They all should. I am the hostess with the mostest. I have these skills to pay the bills. Let's see here. Fit to Dissent says, good to see you back in the normal headquarters. A few questions. What do you believe will be the long-term consequences if Trump is not heavily penalized for his role in the January 6th riot? Okay. Thing number 1, January 6th was not a riot. As we now know in much greater detail than we did, although then it was clearly obvious, it was a long orchestrated and carefully planned armed insurrection to overthrow the government of my country, nullify a legal election, execute a sitting vice president, and install Donald Trump in power as an unelected dictator, presumably for life. It was not a riot. It was an armed insurrection to overthrow my government and kill all the people in the Capitol who didn't agree with that. But second, it's the long-term consequences will be exactly what I have foretold. Donald Trump is not going to be punished for anything, for any part in orchestrating and inciting and leading an armed insurrection to overthrow the United States government. He's not even going to be banned from running for office again. Someone who manifestly now, I mean, we knew it before because he made it pretty clear. Now he manifestly does not believe in the American electoral system. Why is he going to run for office? What's he going to do? Go to Pennsylvania and Wyoming and Arizona and have campaign events? Campaign for what? He's not going to accept the results. He doesn't care about votes. So what's he campaigning for? To make sure that armed resistance cells are okay and up to date in that area, to stand back and stand by? He's not a Democratic candidate. He's not a politician. He doesn't care about being part of the American political system. January 6th proved that to the whole world. The whole world was watching. But he's not going to be penalized for any of that. The obvious thing to do would have been for him to be arraigned on federal treason charges on January 6th and executed on the 10th. And that didn't happen. And if a country allows someone to orchestrate and incite a violent mob to overthrow the United States government and they don't punish him, he will do it again and succeed. So the thing that will happen, the long-term consequences, are the ones that I've been talking about on this channel. This is a Nazi majority country, and never a fascist majority country. And never in history has a country been fascist majority and maintained a democratic ruling elite. That doesn't happen. The fascists take power, run the country into the gutter, and need to be destroyed from outside, with outside intervention. The country needs to be invaded, in other words. Cities reduced to rubble, citizenry reduced to slaves, and then a chance to recover. But it never otherwise. It never happens otherwise. Once you reach a fascist majority, and we are, half of the people you know, half the members of your family, half the people that you see when you walk out in a crowd, anywhere in America, want to live under a dictatorship, not a representative republic. That's not going to stay true. It's not going to stay true that they are the majority, but they don't run the government. That never stays true. And when they run the government, fascists are extremely predictable, and one of the things that is high on their list when they take power is that there be no exceptions. No quiet little recusances, no safe, tranquil pockets where people can just walk around and amongst themselves say, yeah, I don't like these guys at all, they're jerks, but what are you going to do? Fascists want unanimity, forced unanimity. The more involuntary it is, the more they like it. So if you're sitting here in America looking at 2022 and especially at 2024 and thinking, as bad as it will be, I'll just ride it out. It won't happen to my neighborhood. You are dead wrong. You are dead wrong. The fascists who are slavering to take control of this country want there to be no exceptions. The only way that you can get through it is to emigrate, and you are running out of time. You are running out of time to emigrate. By late 2022, early 2023, women in America will not be allowed to travel from state to state for any reason whatsoever. Women won't be allowed to do that. Now, there'll be plenty of cases pending in plenty of local courts, but the police will still turn them back at the border. Do you know that you have a woman? Sir, could you pull over? I need to check your trunk for a woman. After 2024, that will be non-Trumpist. Now, you don't think that's true. You don't believe me, but there's no harm. You don't believe me. You say I could be wrong. Fine. It's never not happened. Could be that America will be the exception. But my point is, what would the harm be in updating your visa, in updating your passport, in finding out what the paperwork is for you to emigrate, in maybe realizing some liquid assets, maybe a large amount of liquid assets? What would be the harm in doing that, even if Crazy Steve is dead wrong? What would be the harm in doing that? The last thing you want is to be the 100,000 Germans in 1933 who felt the doors closed behind them and thought, oh, I guess this is really serious, and now I'm not allowed to leave. So I guess I'm stuck here. That's the last thing you want. Unless you're nuts, unless you're one of those fascists, one of the 200 million people in this country, unless you're one of those. If you're not, if you value the freedom of the American experience, you should emigrate immediately. You should set the ball in motion to emigrate immediately. You are almost out of time. In no time at all, none at all, before a lot of your gym memberships expire, Marjorie Taylor Greene will be running this country. And Marjorie Taylor Greene has said that atheists should pay an extra tax. If they're not Christians, they should pay an extra tax. Marjorie Taylor Greene has said a whole bunch of things and not been rebuked for any of them. Anyway, you had other questions, I'm sure, that did not. My answer to your question is the long-term consequences are going to be the end of the American democratic experience. That's what the long-term consequences are going to be, and they are certainly going to happen, because Donald Trump is not going to be held accountable for launching an insurrection to overthrow the United States government. And if you have small kids, will know, if your kid sets fire to the coffee table and you don't do anything but replace the coffee table, you can expect the kid will set fire to the coffee table again. You can expect that. That will happen. Any country that doesn't prevent that deserves what it gets. But I'm not saying that you deserve it. You're just an ordinary person, a good person, trying to get through every day, going to school, going to your job. If you are in your 20s, it's time you face the reality that you will not be able to grow old doing that in this country. Find a free nation and emigrate. Anyway, you have other questions that don't involve politics here. Are there any justifiable excuses for George R.R. Martin and Patrick Rothfuss for taking so long to finish their series, or is it pure laziness? It's pure laziness. What are your thoughts on the science fiction writer John Scalzi? I think he's strictly average. And finally, I myself simply cannot go back to physical books after falling in love with ebooks. Aren't they great? Aren't they incredible? Do you find yourself having a hard time going back to physical books after reading ebooks? Yes. Yes, I do. I have to. A lot of the stuff that I have to do for my jobs is print books only. And a lot of the print books that I have here, I don't have ebooks for. But yeah. Once the penny drops, once you suddenly see, oh my God, this is so much better, that someone did, in fact, build a better mousetrap, you don't want to go back to, oops, I lost my place, or oops, I dropped it, or oops, I'm trying to hold something else here. Well, or I'm trying to make a note, or what's the word down in the gap there in the gutter? Once you deal with just reading on a slate of glass, you don't want to go back. Luke and Jennifer Higgins say, hi, Steve and Frida. A couple of questions to answer, please. Number one, what are your thoughts on the Greek myths by Robert Graves? It's extremely entertaining to read. Don't believe any of it. It's completely nuts. But it's extremely entertaining to read. If you can, get the really nice Penguin Classic Deluxe edition that they did. It's a delightful volume. I wish I still had mine. I had a copy that Penguin sent me, and I got rid of it. I don't know why. And number two, the Higgins family recently took a vacation to San Francisco and loved it. Did you enjoy visiting San Francisco? Yes. Amelia, hello Amelia, is curious to know if you interacted with the famous sea lions on Pier 39. She loved them. Can you guess why I didn't interact with those sea lions, Amelia? It's because I wasn't alone. That's why. Because I had a crowd of dogs with me, and the sea lions don't like that. And my dogs didn't like that either. And sea lions are odd. I don't actually know the genetics involved. I don't know when sea lions branched off and started evolving into their form now, where they don't get along on land really well, and they're really well adapted for the ocean. I don't know when that happened, but I know there's a lot of resonance there. I can't talk to them in the way I can to dogs. But almost. I can almost do that. I think they're probably very related, very close to dogs in some way or other. But I never got anywhere near them. I never wanted to. They seemed to be enjoying themselves. It seemed like a rude thing to introduce, 10 screaming beagles to that mix, so I didn't do it. John Voto says, will you be doing a read-along of the Odyssey this year? I read the Odyssey every year. Read-along. No, I won't be doing a read-along for August. I recently read the Iliad and found your past read-along videos very helpful. Oh, that's nice. Haven't I done them for the Odyssey as well? I thought I did. No, I'll be reading the Odyssey. I read the Iliad and the Odyssey every summer, but I won't be doing any read-alongs for the Odyssey this year. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're fine. Bell Bottom Blues says, hi, Steve. You're the bomb. I respectfully agree. Number one, your complexion looks flawless. What moisturizer do you use? Bell Bottom Blues. Might be time to update the old glasses prescription because my complexion does not look flawless. It is pitted and pockmarked from a smallpox scare in 1782. And number two, what type of baby is Frida? Cocker Spaniel, for instance, no, she's not a Spaniel. I've never actually had a Spaniel. She's my first terrier. She's a miniature Schnauzer. And we meet Spaniels on our walk, but I've never actually had one. Alex Downey says, "Hi, Steve. What's your opinion of TP's Discworld? I'm a big fan." Is TP Terry Pratchett? And is there some particular reason why you didn't type out Terry Pratchett's name? You're not on a word limit. It's not Twitter. I've never really liked Terry Pratchett. I've read, I think, 12 or 13 books of his, and none of them did anything for me. I know he has a rabid fan base, and I don't slight that at all. It's just whatever magic he's working for you, for instance, or for those other fans, just doesn't work for me at all. If you enjoyed Discworld, what book/story arc was your favorite? Oh, no, it's no way. Also, did you think there was a noticeable decline in his writing after he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's? I never thought it had much to it. Anyway, I didn't notice any decline, but I'm not an expert at all. There are whole booktube channels that are entirely devoted to his work. Seeking Destiny says, "Hey, Steve, do you find it a huge turnoff when booktubers monetize their channel and or obsess on their channel analytics?" I do. Very much so. I do. What are your thoughts on Brandon Sanderson's successful Kickstarter? Do you believe he truly wrote 5 books or whatever the ridiculous amount was during the pandemic? Sure, why not? He has the habit down. Those of you, I think there are very few of you who do. Most of you are lazy and make excuses instead of getting the habit down. But once you get the habit down of generating prose every day, and he obviously does, then you actually don't want a day to go by when you don't do it. And that's a lot of time. That's a lot of prose to do, especially if you have to shoehorn it in with a busy schedule, which suddenly, thanks to COVID, you don't have. I could easily picture it, yeah. I'm starting now to unfortunately see the tentacles of the woke disease infect the sci-fi fantasy book realm. So do you think it will eventually destroy all book genres? Depends on what you mean by destroy. It is definitely influencing. It is definitely infiltrating science fiction, where we are now being told not only the pronouns of the writer, but the pronouns of the characters. And that will make prose all but indecipherable to read. If anyone can be a him, a her, a they, whenever and wherever, then... and also, it'll destroy the genre of science fiction, has started to already, in ways that are more subtle but more damaging even than the rhetorical confusion of pronouns, which is, it will start to make every novel, every short story a purity test, where I don't really care about anything that I'm doing other than eliciting an angry letter to the editor from someone I can then call a racist or a bigot of some kind or other. Once people are more interested in doing that than they are in telling stories or creating compelling characters, as we have seen endlessly with Doctor Who, Star Trek Discovery, Terminator, a million other things. Once that becomes your goal, to elicit outrage from people, then you've destroyed the genre well and truly. Then it's not a question really of pronouns. I expect it to happen pretty much across the board, yeah. Especially in genres, in genre fiction. The woke skulls, the woke locusts who go from one property to another, absolutely do not care about those properties. There is no such thing as a genuine Star Trek Discovery fan, for instance. Instead, they loudly profess that they love Star Trek, but only this Star Trek, and I'm radically changing it, but it's always been this way. Didn't you notice? I guess you weren't that much of a fan. And then they move on. They don't care at all. Once they've bagged it, once they put a head on the wall, then they move on. And genre fiction they view as low-hanging fruit, so they'll go to it first. Like they did, for instance, with the superhero comic book industry. They absolutely do not care about superhero comics, but they ruined it, completely wrecked and destroyed it, and then moved on. Let's see here. And finally, what is your favorite book form to read? Hardcover, paperback, ebook? Ebook, definitely. Joseph Cater says, as one Q&A is uploaded, another is announced, just like we like it. Here are my questions. Number 1, when was the last time you went a full day without reading a book? It was a little while ago. I don't know how well it's represented in my upload schedule on YouTube. I don't know how many years ago it was. I want to say that it was at the end of 2019, near the end, the winter, Thanksgiving of 2019, where I had an unbelievably debilitating 2 or 3 days of, I needed help walking from the bedroom to the bathroom. I got extremely dehydrated. I had no energy at all. Bad headache, sniffling, really, really bad, hacking, persistent cough that stayed with me long after all the other symptoms had disappeared. And, looking back, I wish I should go back in my journals and find out exactly when that was. Because the more I think about it, the more convinced I am that was COVID, that I had COVID. And that the anecdotal stories about how COVID was pretty widespread in this country before that doomed cruise ship docked, before, the very end of 2019 and the early part of 2020, might be true. That might be true. Certainly, I was incapacitated for a couple of days, so I did no reading at all. Let's see here. Number 2, you've talked about your distaste for Stephen King in past. Have I? I've come up from time to time. Does the same apply to Dean Koontz? Because he also had quite a few stinkers under his belt. No, it doesn't. Because Dean Koontz at least is trying. He's not phoning things in. He doesn't think he's all that. He, except in a few books, he is trying. He's not good, usually, but at least he's trying. And when he writes a good book, he is capable of doing it. He's capable of pulling it off. Whereas that has never been true for Stephen King, and certainly isn't true now. If Fairy Tale, his latest book, is any example. And let's see here. Number 3, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul? Is that a question? It's not a question because it doesn't. You don't give me terms. I have no idea what you're talking about. Which one's been on longer? Which one's better acted? Which one do I enjoy more? Which one's more effective? There are no terms, so I don't have. You're just naming 2 things. Nick Piccarilli says, number 1, can you share anything about your experiences with Julia Child that you hinted at in the last Q&A? Well, we became friends through snail mail correspondence. She was a customer in my bookstore, for a couple of times, and realized, as a few other famous customers did, here's somebody that I might want. This person is personable and wide-read. I might want to pick your brain. Could I write to this? I had a number of people. Julia Child was one of them, but there were others, including a certain leading lady for Humphrey Bogart. There were others who they would usually take the same approach. I would take them out into the section, talk to them about what they're looking for, get them recommendations, find the book they came in for, and usually it would be they would say rather shyly, they would say, I'd like to pick your brain about a few other things. Could I write to you, care of the bookstore? And I would always say, just write to me, care of me. Just write direct. You can write to the bookstore, but write directly to me. I do this all the time. I'd be happy to talk books with you. And that sparked a number of snail mail correspondences, a large number of them. And that eventually becomes kind of personal, of course. You start adding in things about who's at the house this weekend, or dogs, or movies, or other books, wider books. One such person, again, there you might know his name, started referring to me as his bookish father confessor. That's all it was, though. It wasn't that we were operatives in Europe together or anything like that. And number 2, what has been the main takeaway from your slow reread of the Wolf Hall trilogy? For those of you who don't know what Nick Piccarilli is talking about here, I'm slowly reading my way through print Canadian trade paperback editions of the 3 Wolf Hall books by Hilary Mantel. I am now in the middle, almost exactly in the middle of The Mirror and the Light, the 3rd book in the series. And my number 1 takeaway, the thing that I keep being struck by, is that Hilary Mantel knows her books backwards and forwards, her own books. There are echoes, lines, little phrases, little knowing glances to one side in The Mirror and the Light that go back 1,000 pages. To the beginning of Wolf Hall, to the middle of Wolf Hall. Little scenes that never come up again in between, and she knows them. And at the exact right moment, she will have a character flash back to that moment. It's incredibly adroit. I don't know that I would have noticed it if I weren't reading these things this way, basically end to end. And it really enhances the experience. What an amazing thing. You might think, so what? Surely an author's going to know their own work. No. I read trilogies from authors all the time where they're getting their own details wrong in the 3rd book. And that has amazed me. I mean, there are a lot of things that have amazed me. That's the number 1 thing. Okay, let's stop there and go on to part 3.